I worked in Toronto for 3 years, and during that time I got really, really disillusioned with corporate business in general. So I made 3 life-changing decisions. One, I resigned from my ad agency, Grey, after 20 years. Secondly, decided to come back to South Africa. And thirdly, and I think what's most important for this forum, is I took a sabbatical and I looked at my own successes and my own failures and business around me and began to study the subject of trust. And what I found was really, really interesting is that trust is the least studied, least understood, yet most important element in any relationship. And for the purposes of today, I'm really going to be talking about trust in business. Do you remember when business was done on a handshake? And when you said to when somebody said to you, trust me, you could. Well, I mean, I think those days are over, because what has basically happened is trust has fallen to an all-time low around the world. And what I want to do today is to show you why trust is so low, why it's so important in business today, why you need it, how some of the most trusted brands in the world have succeeded, and also give you 3 principles that I've researched extensively that I believe you can take away from this presentation today and you can implement in your daily business life. In fact, you can implement them and use them in your personal life in order to build and establish trust. I will also say that this is a 45-minute presentation that I've had to sort of squash into 25 minutes, so I won't be going into as much detail as I'd like to. Okay, why is trust so low? In a study that's been conducted around the world, it's been found that trust has fallen to unprecedented lows in government. We'll start with government. I mean, when I ask anybody in this audience who trusts the government today, I don't think there are very many people. But you know, we're not alone in South Africa in terms of trust in government. And it's not so much about the institute of government that people don't trust. People just don't trust leaders in government anymore. Let me give you a couple of examples. If you take the US, there's constant bickering on Capitol Hill about the fiscal cliff and the debt ceiling has created a mistrust in government. If you look at Ireland, that is a country where the economy became one big Ponzi scheme and collapsed. Iceland was a nation of fishermen who overnight became investment bankers. Their Minister of Finance was a poet. And the country collapsed. You know, even Australia, where they're supposed to be the happiest people on earth, only 30% of Australians trust their government. Let's go on to who trusts sportsmen these days. And honestly, I'm not saying another word about it. I think we all are aware of exactly what's going on. Let's talk about business. Trust in business is also pretty low. In a study that was conducted as well in 25 countries around the world, and I must stress this study did not include South Africa, what they found was that the very institution that we need to trust most, the very place where we put our money, and that's financial services, falls right at the bottom of the trust ladder. And again, I stress this does not include South Africa because we do not have the same issue here. If you look at what are the most trusted industries around the world, it's really ironic that automotive is coming second after technology. So in those 25 countries, it begs the question, do people really then trust a second-hand car salesman more than they do their banker? So there is a big lack of trust in business as well today. One of the things that people don't realize is that trust is not some elusive, soft concept. Trust is a basic instinct. Trust can be built, it can be established, and it can be, obviously it's a lot harder to restore trust after it's been broken, but it can be done. And hopefully, by the time I finish my presentation, you'll have these 3 principles that you'll be able to implement and see how this actually can be done. So let's look at why trust is so important in business today. We live in an information-based, knowledge-driven global economy. I mean, everybody knows that. In the past, big was the competitive advantage. The bigger you were, it was big, eat small, so size was really important. But the world has changed. And the new competitive advantage in business today is speed. Speed is absolutely the most competitive advantage because consumers have had more choice than they've ever had before. And because we are living in a world that is governed by technology, the internet never sleeps. So your customers are always awake. And basically, the internet is always on. What I'm going to show you now is what has transpired in the last minute that I've been speaking, and what happens every single minute of every single day. 100,000 tweets have been sent in the last minute. 684,000 pieces of content has been shared on Facebook. 2 million search queries on Google. 48 hours of video uploaded on YouTube. 47,000 apps downloaded from the App Store. 3,600 photos have been shared on Instagram. 571 websites have been created in the last minute. And almost $300,000 has been spent in the last minute on shopping online. So I think it really gives you an indication of how speed is the new competitive advantage. But in order, this is according to Stephen Covey, in order to have speed, you need trust. Let me show you why you have to have trust in order to get speed. If you work in an organization where there is no trust, this is what happens. There's doubt. There's friction. There's frustration. There's apathy and politics. People are so busy worrying about all these things that they're actually not doing the job of work that they're supposed to do. Now look at an organization that has trust. You have collaboration, you have transparency, you have loyalty, motivation, and ultimately results. So in order to get this competitive advantage, which is speed, you have to have trust. In the world today, 93% of people out there trust the word of somebody just like themselves more than anything else, more than traditional advertising, more than PR, more than anything. But 70% of people actually trust the word of strangers more than anyone else. Let me give you some examples. Just look at Twitter. People are taking their news feeds from certain people they don't even know, and they're trusting them to get this news. I mean, the Twitter revolution that has gone on in the last week with the Oscar Pistorius bail hearing is just unbelievable. TripAdvisor. 100 million people belong to TripAdvisor. That means that 100 million people trust the word of a stranger when they're booking their next holiday. Then look at LinkedIn. Today, at certain times, LinkedIn, your profile on LinkedIn is actually replacing sometimes a traditional CV. And employers are looking at they take recommendations from people they may never ever speak to when they're thinking of hiring. But something else has changed in the world of business today. And this is really important for leaders. We're going back, and our previous speaker actually mentioned this, we're going back to a time where people and leaders have to be more caring. Over the past few years, business didn't care that much about their employees, or about their customers. All they were interested in was the bottom line. How could they cut costs in order to achieve their bottom line? But what has happened now is we have moved, and we are moving, from a service economy to an experience economy, and now we've moved into a social, caring, and therefore a more trusting economy. We need our consumers, we need, first of all, our employees and our team members to like us. And then we need our consumers to like us, because if they don't, they're not going to follow us on Twitter. They're not going to like us on Facebook, and they can spread the word about anything that we do to millions of people. So what actually happened to make business leaders suddenly realize that they actually have to now look at caring more about not just their employees, but their customers? And they didn't have some big epiphany one day and went, wow, we've got to be better people. One thing happened, and one thing only, and that is Web 2.0, or as we know it, social media. Because for the first time ever, the power shifted from companies to consumers. Suddenly, the impersonal, silent internet got a voice. And this voice has impacted on every business and every brand. And therefore, the way we do business today has to change.